are two philosophies in the world of college football. Play your conference, just play one scheduled game every few years that's out of conference to give everybody a little wetting of their whistle and then move forward, or play anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I think most people fall in the first category, especially if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC. Look, we have too many landmines to negotiate anyway. We don't need to add any more trouble to a season than necessary. And so it gets to the conversation. Matt Rhule, he was talking about at Nebraska, he has very little interest in playing and scheduling out-of-conference games. We'll read his quote. And now the athletic director at the University of Texas, he comes out, and I like this one. He says that the Texas Longhorns are looking to play anybody, anywhere, anytime. Quote, our brand should play the greatest brands in college football because we're the best, unquote. He is not shying away from non-conference games, no matter where he's ranked, no matter what the teams are ranked or what they could be ranked down the road, because that's what ends up happening. You get the name a few years earlier, and they might be okay, and then you get them 3 or 4 years later, and they could be number 5, number 2, number 1 in the nation when you get them. So he's saying, Chris De La Conte, will play anybody, anytime, anywhere. We don't care what your conference is. Matt Rhule says we'll just stick to our conference and not make things any tougher.
Why in the world would a Big Ten team who's already playing 9 conference games, why would you ever play one of those games? Like, there's some SEC teams that last year only played 3 away games in another team's stadium. We're in a league where some years you have 5 home Big Ten games. Some year you have 5 road. You have to go on the road 5 times in the Big Ten with no, Florida, Georgia, in a neutral site. So they proved to us this year when they did all the seeding and all that stuff that early season wins didn't mean a thing. That really it was, at the end of the day, what you look like in the last month of the season. And when I say what it looks like, it's really how good your offense is. If you're scoring points and blowing people out late in the year, you're going to make it into the playoffs. So, we beat Colorado. That was the same weekend, Coach, that Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. That was a huge win for us. That was a huge loss for them. They made the playoffs. Obviously, we did not.
So, dude, you went 7-6. Shut the hell up.
There's that too.
Stop crying. You were 5-2 at home, so you couldn't even take care of your home schedule. I understand to a point what he's saying, but he was just making things up. Because if playing great at the end of the year got you in the postseason, South Carolina would have been in. Because South Carolina was beating everybody at the end of the year. Had you not lost to, let's see, 56-7 to Indiana, had you not lost to UCLA, who wasn't very good, or to USC, or to Iowa, where you scored 10 points, maybe you make the college football playoff. So start worrying about actually winning the games instead of crying about who you're scheduling and who you're not scheduling.
Nebraska, they started the season against Cincinnati, might be at a neutral location, like opening weekend.
Oh.
And then they don't go on the road for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Shocking.
Then it's Maryland, at Minnesota, and then 2 more home games, then at UCLA, and then the big one for them is at Penn State. 4 true road games
the whole year,
all year long.
But you're worried about the SEC.
He picked the wrong season to start talking about that nonsense.
And I hate when coaches go his route and they are only talking about it. Basically, he's saying, without saying it, the potential for losing, and not talking about if you do schedule an out-of-conference big boy and you win, the benefit, which is what you are supposed to be thinking, or how you're supposed to be thinking, the benefit of beating somebody who's out of conference and you get the win.
They just had a home-and-home canceled against Tennessee, and they used stadium renovations as why they didn't want to do it. Be quiet. Dude, I understand the imbalance of schedule. The SEC and the ACC both have 8-game conference schedules, so you're going to play 4 out-of-conference games. I'll look at somebody like Georgia or Florida or all these teams that have in-state out-of-conference games. Georgia already has a guaranteed Power 5 game against Georgia Tech. South Carolina plays Clemson. Florida plays Florida State. Kentucky plays Louisville. All these teams are guaranteed to do that. Then what the Dogs have been doing is, all right, we'll go play a neutral site game at MBS and go against Oregon, top 10 team. We'll go against Clemson, top 10 team.
Yeah.
You know what happens to that? You do have leeway at the end of the year when you have a schedule like that. You do have somebody go, all right, yeah, they might have 2 losses, but they lost to 2 really good in-conference teams, and they played some really good out-of-conference teams.
Both the Big Ten and
just takes
the
one.
SEC have bottom dwellers. When you're talking about the totality of their conferences, the bottom dwellers are gimmies too. So, yeah, on any given Saturday.
Well, you think
whatever.
so until Vandy beats Alabama, so you never know.
Yeah, that's
You
once
got to go play the game.
ever.
To
Speaking of
Texas'
Alabama.
point and to the athletic director's point, they got home and away scheduled with Ohio State in the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's on their conference schedule. You said Nebraska, right?
Oh, Texas, I'm sorry.
Texas,
No,
okay.
to Texas
Okay,
AD's
yeah.
point.
Texas, yeah. Texas, good.
Yeah. Ohio State at Ohio State this year.
Yeah.
Ohio State at Texas next year. Then Michigan comes to Texas.
And they just went to Michigan this year.
Right, so there's another home and away. Then they have a home and away against Notre Dame
Okay.
in 28 and 29. So
Yeah.
to his point, and it just takes one of those teams to make your schedule out of conference schedule look legit.
Look, you're going to have most likely 2 bad games. Everybody's going to have 2.
Well, to your point, San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston all on
Sure.
Texas schedule next year.
Okay, but guess what? Then you play Ohio State or Michigan, and then you play an SEC schedule.
Yep.
So you have 3 guaranteed wins. Some will have 2 guaranteed wins, and then you're going to play other ones. Like, what are we complaining about?
I wonder where the fans are though, John, because I think a lot of fans just want the wins. They want to rack up the wins.
No.
Especially if they're away. If you're at home, look, you're at the stadium, you want a big team in there because you pay for it. If you're at home watching it on TV, do you really care who you're watching, or do you want the win to get you to 11 or 12 wins in a season?
When it's my team, you do want to win, but I'd much rather watch a better game.
I would too.
Yeah, so, and I'll use Miami. Our first 4 games are all at home. 2 of them are really good out-of-conference games. We play Notre Dame to open the year, and our last home game in September is against Florida. Now we have 2 candy asses in between with Bethune-Cookman and USF, who's not a terrible team.
Right.
But that's where you go. You know what that made me do?
Talk about Bethune-Cookman.
I called my boy Derek down in Florida, and I said, lock me in for 2 season tickets. Because I'm going to pay to go see those games. You know what I'm not going to pay to see? I'm not going to pay to see if you would have taken Notre Dame and Florida off of there, and that would have been Central Michigan and Eastern Texas. I'm not paying for those.
So what do you want? 404-231-1680. Do you want another SEC game going to the 9-game model, or do you have a problem? Do you like going to open up against Clemson? Do you like the games against Notre Dame? Do you like the games that you get a chance to play that you don't get to see? Memorable games, maybe once in a generation, once in a decade games, if you are a Georgia fan or an SEC fan.
Georgia fans complained, and rightly so, for the lack of home games at Sanford Stadium that were worth a damn the last couple of years. Because you played out-of-conference games at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Your conference schedule, unfortunately, it didn't just
work
bring
out
the
great
best.
for you,
It didn't bring the best teams in. For a while, the SEC East was down, so you weren't playing great teams. Georgia, Florida, obviously being one that's a neutral site game every year. So yeah, they want to play better teams at home. I love seeing home and home series. Think about how awesome it is if you're a Georgia or Georgia Tech fan and you get to go on the road and go against a big boy out-of-conference team. I always use that Georgia example when they did the Notre Dame takeover. How awesome is that as a fan to see your school at another premier location getting a chance to play?
And you had the games, and look, everybody has them, but until it works itself out down the road in years to come, you get the Sanford games. You get Kent State at home. You've been waiting all week for one game at home. You tailgate for hours and hours. You got Ball State and UAB coming in. And you have these games that you know you're going to put up 50 and 48 by the third quarter. Is that what football is supposed to be? And is that what you want?
Well, it's good for when you're building a program and you want to get your second and third string guys in, and you're playing UMass and you want to see the third quarterback come in. As a fan, our attention spans are shorter. Do I want to spend, I'll even just say going to Georgia Tech, which is an easier drive. Do I want to spend 5 to 6 hours of my day driving down to watch them play the Citadel? No, I don't. I want to go see them play Virginia Tech on a Thursday night where that place is rocking and rolling.
So it's a conversation. Texas says we'll do anything. We'll play the best because we are the best. I like that mindset. I like somebody that's looking to set up games like that. It's better if you are a fan. If you're not even a fan of those programs, that's another game you would watch on TV.
Yeah, we always talk about iron sharpens iron. You get better by playing better teams. You don't get better by fattening up your schedule against terrible teams. What was the big argument we had this year going into the postseason? Boise State shouldn't be seeded high because they didn't play anybody all year. Notre Dame, maybe they didn't beat anybody. And they proved to end up being really good, but they hadn't beaten anybody throughout the year. The big argument was Texas. Why is Texas ranked so high? Because they're in the SEC, but they hadn't beaten anybody. Yeah, they beat Michigan early in the year, who wasn't very good. So the argument about being better at certain times, you get better by playing better teams.